Good morning, everybody. Minerva says hi. So today is Thursday, April 15th, and we are on day 10 of Module 4 in Wit and Wisdom. And guys, I can't tell you how excited I am. I've never made it this far into Module 4, so I'm super glad that we are able to get farther than the other years that I've done Wit and Wisdom. Anyway, so before we get started, let's go over our learning targets and our big question. Remember, our big question, our essential question is, how does food nourish us? And we have a new essential question for our book, Stone Soup. And we also have a new book coming up. Let me see. I'm going to show it to you. It's called Bone Button Borscht. So these two books are for the next several lessons. And our medium-sized question, our focusing question is, how can food nourish a community? So those are our big questions and our medium-sized question. And then our small question for today is, our content framing question is, we're going to wonder, what do I notice and wonder about Bone Button Borscht? Interesting. All right, and then we have a craft question today. We're going to experiment with, how does listening, hold on, how does listening help us appreciate work? And why is expressing an opinion important? So those are our two craft questions for today. And then our learning goal for today is to ask and answer questions about the new text, Bone Button Borscht. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started on our video. I'm going to share my screen with you. Make sure that you have your knowledge response journal out and ready.
Welcome back, incredible thinkers. I'm Susabella, your Great Minds teacher. Let's see what we need for today. Today, you'll need your journal and a pencil. Please pause here to gather what you need and just hit play when you're ready to continue. Whenever I hear someone start to say, I like, or I love, I know that an opinion is coming. Let's take a closer look at opinion statements. We love why questions. Why questions really require us to use our powerful thinking. Here's a great why question. Why is expressing an opinion important? You already know a lot about the word opinion. Please pause here to think about the word opinion and what you already know. If you'd like to, you can also chat about it with a learning partner. Just hit play when you're ready to continue.
Okay, so what is it that we know about the word opinion? What do you guys already know about opinion? Well, we know that everybody has a different opinion. Not everyone has the same opinion as other people. I know that the word opinion is what someone thinks about something. What do you think about another person? What you think about an event or something that happens, or a thought, okay? Like, you could have a different opinion about, let's just use one of the biggest things that has happened in the last 6 months in our country, the presidential election. You may have an opinion that differs from someone else, and that's okay. We're allowed to have different opinions. You might have an opinion about, let's say, chicken noodle soup. Maybe you think chicken noodle soup is the best soup on the planet, and maybe your brother or your sister do not have that same opinion. But an opinion is what you think or feel about something or someone or some event.
An opinion is what someone thinks about a person or thing. Read the definition out loud.
What someone thinks about a person or thing.
As humans, we have opinions all the time. I have an opinion about soup. I like chicken soup more than tomato soup. What kind of soup do you like best? Share your opinion out loud with a learning partner or with Jackson. Use the sentence frame here. Pause to practice saying your opinion out loud and just hit play when you're ready to continue.
Okay, so here's an example. I like baked potato soup the best. So tell me, what kind of soup do you like?
What you just shared with your learning partner or with Jackson is called an opinion statement. An opinion statement is a sentence that expresses what you think or how you feel about a topic. In order for something to be an opinion statement, the sentence has to express what you're thinking or feeling about something. It can't just state a fact. I'm going to show you and also read statements on the screen. If you think the statement is an opinion, either wave your arms in the air or shout, "Opinion!" Ready? Here we go. Breakfast is the best meal of the day. I ate pizza last night for dinner. We live in the United States. Sneakers are more comfortable than sandals. Playing tag is the most fun thing to do at recess. Three of the statements that I read out loud were opinion statements. They were how I felt or how I thought about a topic. Another way of determining or figuring out if a statement is an opinion, if it is an opinion, you might even feel differently or have a different opinion. For example, you might not think that breakfast is the best meal of the day. You might think that dinner is. Or you might think that sandals are actually more comfortable than sneakers. Or you might prefer going down the slide more than playing tag during recess. I ate pizza last night for dinner is not an opinion. It's not how I felt or thought about my dinner. It's a fact. It is what I ate for dinner last night. We live in the United States. That's also a fact. That is not an opinion statement. It's so important to share your opinions with others. That way, others know how you feel or what you're thinking about a topic. Keep sharing your opinions with others, and I will see you again soon, my friends.
Okay. So before we listen to our new story, I just realized we need to listen to Stone Soup. We did our notice and wonder about the cover, but we did not actually listen to the story yesterday, or on Tuesday. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna listen to Stone Soup, and then we're gonna listen to Bone Button Borscht. Okay. So hold on one second while I pull it up.
Country. They were on their way home from Three soldiers trudged down a road in a strange country. They were on their way home from the wars. Besides being tired, they were hungry. In fact, they hadn't eaten nothing for 2 days. "How I would like a good dinner tonight," said the first. "And a bed to sleep in," said the second. "But all of that is impossible," said the third. "We must march on." On they marched. Suddenly ahead of them, they saw the lights of a village. "Maybe we'll find a bite to eat there," said the first. "And a loft to sleep in," said the second. "No harm in asking," said the third. Now the peasants of the place feared strangers. When they heard that 3 soldiers were coming down the road, they talked among themselves. "Here come 3 soldiers. Soldiers are always hungry, but we've little enough for ourselves," and they hurried to hide their food. They pushed stacks of barley under the hay in the lofts. They lowered buckets of milk down their wells. They spread old quilts over their carrot bins. They hid their cabbages and potatoes under the beds. They hung their meats in the cellars. They hid all they had to eat. Then they waited. The soldiers stopped first at the house of Paul and Francois. "Good evening to you," they said. "Could you spare a bit of food for 3 hungry soldiers?" "We have had no food for ourselves for 3 days," said Paul. Francois made a sad face. "It has been a poor, poor harvest." The 3 soldiers went on to the house of Albert and Louise. "Could you spare a bit of food and have some corner where we could sleep in for the night?" "Oh no," said Albert. "We gave all of our spare food to soldiers who came before you." "And our beds are full too," said Louise. At Vincent Marie's, the answer was the same. It had been a poor harvest, and all of the grain must be kept for seed. So it went all through the village. Not a peasant had any food to give away. They all had good reasons. One family had used the grain for feed, while another had an old sick father to care for. All had too many mouths to fill. The villagers stood in the street and sighed. They looked as hungry as they could. The 3 soldiers talked together. Then the first soldier called out, "Good people." The peasants drew near. "We are 3 hungry soldiers in a strange land. We have asked you for food, and you have no food. Well then, we'll have to make stone soup." The peasants stared. "Stone soup? That would be something to know about." "First, we'll need a large iron pot," the soldiers said. The peasants brought the largest pot they could find. "How else to cook enough?" "There's none too large," said the soldiers, "but it will do. And now, water to fill it and a fire to heat it." It took many buckets of water to fill the pot. A fire was built on the village square, and the pot was set to boil. And now, if you please, 3 round, smooth stones. Those were easy to find. The peasants' eyes grew round, and they watched the soldiers drop the stones into the pot. "Any soup needs salt and pepper," said the soldiers as they began to stir. Children ran to fetch salt and pepper. Stones like these generally make good soup. But oh, if there were carrots, it would be so much better. "Why, I think I have a carrot or 2, said Francois as she ran off. She came back with her apron full of carrots from the bin beneath the red quilt. "A good stone soup should have cabbage," said the soldiers as they sliced the carrots into the pot. "But no use asking for what we don't have." "I think I could find a cabbage somewhere," said Marie, and she hurried home. Back she came with 3 cabbages from the cupboard under the bed. If only we had a bit of beef and a few potatoes, the soup would be good enough for a rich man's table. The peasants thought that over. They remembered their potatoes and sides of beef hanging in the cellars. They ran to fetch them. A rich man's soup, and all from a few stones. It seemed like magic. "Ah," sighed the soldiers as they stirred in the beef and potatoes. "If we only had a little barley and a cup of milk, the soup would be fit for the king himself. Indeed, he asked for such a soup when he last dined with us." The peasants looked at each other. The soldiers had entertained the king? Well, but no use asking for what you don't have, the soldiers sighed. The peasants brought their barley from the lofts. They brought their milk from the wells. The soldiers stirred the barley and milk into the steaming broth while the peasants stared. At last, the soup was ready. "All of you shall taste," the soldier said. "But first, a table must be set." Great tables were placed in the square, and all around were lighted torches. Such a soup, how good it smelled, truly fit for a king. But then the peasants asked themselves, would not such a soup require bread and a roast and cider? Soon a banquet was spread, and everyone sat down to eat. Never had there been such a feast. Never had the peasants tasted such a soup. And fancy, made from stones. They ate and drank and ate and drank, and after that they danced. They danced and sang far into the night. At last they were tired. Then the three soldiers asked, "Is there not a loft where we could sleep?" "Let three such wise and splendid gentlemen sleep in a loft? Indeed, they must have the best beds in the village." So the first soldier slept in the priest's house. The second soldier slept in the baker's house, and the third soldier slept in the mayor's house. In the morning, the whole village gathered in the square to give them a send-off. "Many thanks for what you have taught us," the peasants said to the soldiers. "We shall never go hungry now that we know how to make soup from stones." "Oh, it's all in knowing how," said the soldiers, and off they went down the road. Such men don't grow on every bush.
Okay, so that was the story Stone Soup. And now we're going to listen to the story Bone Button Borscht.
San Petrichik. One dark winter's night, a ragged little beggar hobbled along a lonely road. It was snowy and bitter cold, but in his head it was warm and rosy. He saw a blazing fireplace and a table loaded with bowls of borscht, noodle pudding, roast chicken, fruit, nuts, and a jug of wine. And his host was saying, "More chicken, Mr. Beggar?" And he was saying, "Oh no, I couldn't eat another bite." Ah, there is nothing like being a beggar, he thought. Such good it brings out in people. They share, they give, and me, I get a little something too. It's perfect. The beggar reached the crest of a hill. He peered out through the driving snow into the night. "So, where's the town?" he asked himself. "There should be a town at the bottom of this hill. I can't see it." As he walked downhill, small shadowy houses slowly took shape on his left and on his right. "Fine," he said. "Now I see the town. But where are the lights? Where are the people?" He knocked on a door. "Please, a little food for a poor starving beggar," he cried. A face appeared in the frosty window, then vanished. There were footsteps, and then silence. The beggar went to another house and knocked. "Please help me. I'm hungry and cold." "Go away," called a voice from within. "Just let me in for a few minutes even." "No, go away." So the beggar moved on, from house to house and door to door, but no one would help him. What is wrong with these people? He wondered. He trudged further down the road. Suddenly, he spotted a thin line of light in the snow. What color does that light appear to be? I think it's yellow. He followed it to a crack in a doorway, pushed the door open, and went inside. It was a synagogue. Thank God for synagogues, he cried and rushed inside. As he warmed himself by the stove, he looked around the room. Suddenly, he spotted a man in the shadows. It was the synagogue caretaker, the Shamas. Shalom Aleichem, peace be with you, called the beggar. The Shamas did not answer. Strange, thought the beggar. A glimmer crept into his eye, and the corners of his mouth turned up ever so slightly. He had an idea. He grabbed one of the bone buttons on his coat and tugged. Sh! Off came the button. Sh! Sh! Off came two more. Sh! And another. Sh! And another. Still, the Shamas did not speak. But now he was looking at the beggar. Now he was curious. The beggar counted the buttons. There were 5. Boy, if I had one more button, he said. Shamas said nothing. Boy, if only I had one more button. Still the Shamas was silent. Oi, if only I had one more button. Finally, the Shamas spoke. Look, mister, I won't give you a button. Nobody in this town will give you a button. Why not? Asked the beggar. Because we're poor, Mr. Beggar. We don't give to each other anymore. So why should we give even a button to a stranger? Why? Asked the beggar. Because with one more button, I could make us a soup. I could make a nice hot borscht. That's ridiculous, scoffed the Shamas. Impossible. Nobody makes borscht from buttons. Mr. Shamas, said the beggar, I'm shocked. Haven't you ever heard of bone, button, borscht? Bone, button, borscht, asked the Shamas. Let me explain, said the beggar. These buttons in my hand are very special. With just one more button from you, I can make bone, button, borscht for the whole town. I can make you a miracle, Mr. Shamas. Naturally, the Shamas was very curious. All right, he cried, I'll get the button, and he ran to the door. Wait, called the beggar. I'll need bowls and cups and a knife and a ladle and a spoon. Oh, and a pot maybe. The Shamas sped down the road to the tailor's door and knocked. Mendel, Mendel, give me a bone button, he called. No, go away, shouted Mendel. No, Mendel, you don't understand. The button isn't for me, said the Shamas. It's for the little beggar in the synagogue. He's going to make a miracle. With my bone button? Asked Mendel. What's he going to do? Raise it from the dead? Teach it to sing, maybe? No, Mendel, he needs it for the borscht. He's going to make borscht from buttons. That's impossible, scoffed Mendel. Nobody can make borscht from buttons. Listen, Mendel, said the Shamas, give me the button. What's it going to hurt? Maybe we'll have a miracle. All right, replied Mendel. I'll give you the button, but I want to come too. I want to see this miracle. So come, said the Shamas. They ran to the house next door and knocked. Leah, Leah, give us a wooden spoon, they cried. No, she shouted. Go away. Leah, it's not for us. It's for the little beggar in the synagogue. He's going to make a miracle. With my spoon? Asked Leah. What's he going to do? Use it to part the Red Sea? Teach it to dance, maybe? No, Leah. He needs it for the borscht. He's going to make borscht from buttons. That's impossible, scoffed Leah. Look, Leah, give us a spoon. What's it going to hurt? Maybe we'll have a miracle. All right, replied Leah, but I want to come. I want to see this miracle. So come, said the Shamas and the tailor. And my family too, she added. So bring them, they said. So Leah, her family, Mendel, and the Shamas marched down the street. They banged on doors. They begged and they borrowed cups and bowls, a ladle, a knife, and a huge soup pot. Along with all these things, the crowd grew. As it chattered its way up the street towards the synagogue, others came to their windows and doors. I wonder what's going to happen next. Where are you going? They asked. What are you doing with that pot? And the people in the street replied, There's some beggar in the synagogue who says he can make borscht from buttons. That's impossible, shouted the people in the houses, but they were curious. So they grabbed their hats and coats and joined the others. By the time the Shamas reached the synagogue, the whole town was with them. The people crammed themselves inside. The beggar looked up and cried, Shalom Aleichem, peace be with you. There was a long silence. Then someone called out, So, Mr. Miracle Man, Make us a miracle. You want a miracle? The beggar asked. I'll give you a miracle. Pot, he cried. They put the pot on the stove. Water! They poured in the water. Button! They gave him the button. Plunk, plunk, plunk. The beggar dropped in all the bone buttons. Do you think there's really going to be some borscht? He picked up the wooden spoon and stirred. When the pot began to steam and bubble, he spooned out some water and took a sniff. Not bad, he said, but it could be better. What could make it better? Asked the people. A little sugar, a little salt, a little pepper. That could make it better, replied the beggar. So they brought him salt and sugar and pepper. He sprinkled them all into the pot and stirred. Then he took another sniff. Not bad, he said, but it could be better. What could make it better? Asked the people. Have you got any pickle juice? That could make it better, replied the beggar. So they brought him pickle juice, and he poured it into the pot. The beggar stirred, and then he stopped. He looked at the people. He looked at the pot. He looked at the people again. Then he shook his head. You've got problems, Mr. Beggar, asked the shamus. The beggar frowned. Wait, said the shamus. He ran to a cupboard and brought back a bulb of garlic. Would this help, Mr. Beggar? He asked. Why not? Laughed the beggar. Mr. Beggar, I've got some carrots, someone said. And I've got beets, called another. I've got onions. I've got beans. Would these help, Mr. Beggar? They asked. They wouldn't hurt, laughed the beggar. So the people ran off and returned with their arms full of vegetables. The beggar sliced them all. He diced, he chopped, he shredded. Then he dumped them into the bubbling pot, and he stirred that borscht round and round. Do you know what we have here? Asked the beggar. We have a beautiful borscht. That's what we have, a very tasty borscht. And now some people say a little bit of cabbage really brings out the flavor. But I say keep it simple. Who needs cabbage for borscht? At the back of the synagogue, a woman waved her arms. Mr. Beggar, you want cabbage? I've got cabbage, Mr. Beggar. Before he could reply, the woman was gone. She returned with a sack full of cabbages and handed it to the beggar. He looked at the cabbages. He looked at the people. Then he shrugged his shoulders and began to chop. He chopped until every last cabbage had been added to the borscht. The people watched the steam rise from the pot. They listened to the bubbling borscht. They smelled the rich, sweet, and sour aroma as it filled the synagogue. Bellies rumbled, mouths watered, and everyone pressed in closer when the beggar finally ladled some borscht into a cup. It was deep red and thick with vegetables. He blew on it. He blessed it. Then he dipped in his spoon and he tasted it. Slurp, slurp, slurp. So, Mr. Beggar, how does it taste? The beggar smiled. Not bad. Who wants to try some? Everyone in the room rushed forward. They snatched cups. They grabbed bowls. Borscht, 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 they chanted. The beggar patiently ladled steaming hot borscht into every bowl and cup. Soon everyone was sipping and slurping borscht. Then the people raised their arms. They rolled their eyes toward heaven and they cried out, delicious, perfectly delicious. This is the best borscht we have ever tasted. The little beggar did it. He made borscht out of buttons. It's a miracle. Then, like magic, bread appeared and boiled potatoes and roast chicken and wine. The people ate and they laughed and they ate. Then they brought out accordions and violins and they sang and they danced for hour after delightful hour. And when the last slurp of borscht was slurped, the last dance danced, and the last song sung, the shamus invited the beggar to spend the night at his house. The next night, another family took him in, then another and another. One day, the beggar gathered the townsfolk together to say goodbye. Please don't go, they begged. I must, he said. But your buttons, how can we make borscht without your magic bone buttons? And how can I fasten my coat without buttons? Asked the beggar. How can I keep warm without buttons? So they traded with the beggar. They gave him brass buttons for bone buttons. Then the beggar left. They never saw him again. The years passed. One by one, the beggar's bones buttons were lost. But it is a strange thing, a wonder perhaps. The townsfolk learned they didn't really need the buttons. They learned to make borscht without them, and they learned to help one another without borscht, even in hard times. That was the real miracle the beggar left behind. The end. If you've never tried borscht, you should try to get a recipe online so that you can taste what borscht really taste like.
Okay, so what I want you to do today, you're going to go to page 179 and you're going to make a notice and wonder chart on bone button borscht. Okay, I want you to tell me 2 things that you noticed about this story and at least 1 wonder. Okay, and your notices can also be comparing bone button borscht to stone soup. Okay, if you notice things that are similar, you can make those as part of your notices as well. So you're going to do that on page 179 of your journal today for bone button borscht. Okay, so that's actually all that we have for today. You're just going to do that notice and wonder chart and post it in the Google slide that I give you, and that's it. Hope you guys have a great afternoon. Bye. Oh, wait, we can't. We got to do, I always forget this, don't I? We have to do our word of the day. Kindest. I like that word, kindest. Very good. Our word for today is kindest. All right, I will see you guys later. Bye.